Hi, my name is Lily and welcome to my channel and welcome to my October reading wrap-up. I read a total of 10 books in October and I'm going to give you a quick summary of each book and what I thought about them, and there's a real range of genres in here. First up we have Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is an adult contemporary romance and it is the companion novel slash sequel to Icebreaker. So in this one we follow Aurora and Russ. Russ is from book one. He is the character who causes the disaster that leads the ice hockey team and the ice skating team to have to share an ice rink. And then Aurora is new in this book. They have a one-night stand at Russ's house party at the beginning of the book and go their separate ways, both kind of wanting more but thinking that the other doesn't. But then they find out that they are both camp counsellors for the same age group at a summer camp this summer. But the problem is this camp has a rule that the camp counsellors are not allowed to canoodle. And so this is following them trying to avoid temptation over the summer. I absolutely love this one. I gave it 5 stars. I thought Icebreaker was kind of meh in the end and it was really being carried by its sex scenes. This one I felt like had so much of what I was missing from Icebreaker. I absolutely loved the main characters. I liked that they both got their own independent storyline and I loved watching them develop throughout the book and seeing them get closer together but not entirely relying on each other. I thought the kind of forced non-proximity was quite cool as well, where they felt for a long time like they can't sort of do anything together, and so watching them kind of build a friendship first was really interesting, and I thought they both were really well-rounded characters. The sex scenes that were there were good. I would rate this like a 3 chili romance. This is kind of a standard contemporary romance level of chilies. Overall, I would recommend this as a summer read, maybe not one to pick up in the winter months, but it is a great summer read and I really, really enjoyed it. Next up, we have my favourite book of the month, and that is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is the final book in the Wayfarer series. This one follows a group of characters who get stranded on the equivalent of an intergalactic truck stop during a disaster, and there's no communication between the place that they are staying and anywhere else, basically. And so it is about this group of ragtag people who all have different assumptions and stereotypes of each other coming together and supporting each other throughout the days that they are trapped in this truck stop. This has the classic Becky Chambers take on gender, sexuality, and how different species would have different relationships with these things. I really enjoyed the look into how different races would view, and different species would view, kind of human consumption and what humans eat. I believe this is the only book in the series with no human characters. So that was really interesting. I did have to Google what the characters are supposed to look like because I struggled to hold those pictures in my head. But once I had kind of grasped that, it made sense. My favourite character is Tupo. They are the child of the owner of the truck stop, Ayulu. And I just thought that Tupu is just such a cute little character. The idea behind their species is that they choose a gender when they kind of reach puberty, essentially, and so this character is pre-puberty and so they haven't chosen a gender yet, so they are referred to using they them pronouns. Or are they? No, I think it's Zia and Zia self is how they're referred to, actually. But anyway, Tupo is my favourite. I also really liked the way that the different characters kind of challenged each other and each other's perceptions. It talked a lot about colonialism and how ex-colonies are treated. We have one displaced species that no longer have a home planet, and kind of discussions around why it's so difficult for them to get a home planet. And it's really interesting, really funny, really sweet, really heartwarming. I cannot recommend the Wayfarer series enough. Next, I read Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is an adult kind of gothic-y, kind of horror but not really book. It follows Constanta, who is the first wife of Dracula. And so it tells kind of the story of Dracula through the perspective of Constanta. I am not familiar with the story of Dracula, so I can't tell you if this is accurate or true to the original text, but I really enjoyed it. It's told in second person, as if Constanta is writing her final letter to Dracula. And so it talks about her perception and how she views the different events, how her perception of Dracula changes over time from kind of loving her husband and seeing how wonderful he is, to her changing and realizing the monster within. And I really enjoyed that. And it also shows how her relationships with the other consorts develops over time. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, but I felt like the ending could have been a little bit better. I was looking for a bit more explanation about how they survive in the modern world, in the modern age of surveillance, and with their dwindling money at the end of the book. But I liked it. I was surprised by how much I was drawn into this book and how much I wanted to read it, and it's a very quick read as well. Then I read Say You'll Be 9 by Lucy Lennox. This is one of her standalone novels. This one follows 9 and Cooper. So 9 is the 9th child in a very large family, and he works in basically a hardware store, but he also makes videos on the side about kind of how to do different things and different kind of DIY hardware style videos. And one day he is approached by a company that like makes tools who want to sponsor him, but they're wanting to do it for Pride Month, and they're basically saying like, hey, are you queer? If so, we'd like to sponsor you for Pride Month. Otherwise, can you recommend someone who is? And essentially 9 really wants to take this job because it's a lot of money, and he wants to use it to kind of buy his own land. And then he finds out that his brother's best friend, Cooper, who is the only gay person that he knows, also needs money to help pay for his brother's medical bills. So he manages to convince Cooper to pretend to be his boyfriend and work on this sponsorship campaign with him, where they renovate a house in the mountains together in order to get the money. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this one. I thought this was going to be kind of silly and fluffy. I gave it 4 stars. It's quite a high chili rating, I'd say maybe a 3.5, but it's still really sweet and has a lot of plot in it, and they actually do take a while to have any kind of spice at all. And so there's a lot of the kind of characters growing together. And the biggest plot point of this as well is that 9 is questioning his sexuality, and throughout the book is discovering that he might not be straight, and Cooper is also discovering this about 9, so Cooper thinks that 9 is straight. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it and how it gradually developed and how they found each other through this exploration, and how they also kind of talked about their struggles throughout life, and so it wasn't just all about the romance. The thing is, this book suffered from a severe lack of research. If you even took 1 minute to understand how sponsorships of YouTube channels worked, this would not be how it would work. And that kind of, I struggle with that element of things. And overall, like, I liked it, but it definitely was missing something. And I felt like the ending was a little bit rushed. But if you're looking for like a fun, forced proximity, cabin in the woods kind of romance, this is definitely one to try. Then I read Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. This is an adult literary fiction translated from Japanese. This one I gave 3 stars, and I was actually really sad by how let down I was by this book. I wanted to love it so much more than I did. This one follows Takako. She is in this kind of secret relationship with one of her colleagues, only to find out one day that he actually has a fiancé that he is planning to marry. And when he tells her this, he says that he still wants to date her on the side, but obviously she decides to break up with him. And because of this, she feels she can't continue working at her current workplace and quits. She is struggling to find a new job, and so her estranged uncle offers to let her stay in the room above his bookshop until she gets back on her feet again, in exchange for help running the bookshop. It sounds beautiful and it sounds amazing, and I really like Takako's story. That's the one that I found the most interesting, but unfortunately that doesn't actually end up being the focus of the book as much. And Takako herself I found really irritating. I didn't like her. I didn't like how she progressed in the book, and I found her attitude kind of gross. And also the side plot with the uncle that eventually kind of becomes the main plot, I just wasn't on board with it. I didn't love it. So this one I don't know if I would recommend. If you want to give it a go, but it definitely wasn't one for me. Next we have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is an adult horror / thriller. I gave this one 3 stars. I was quite disappointed by it. It is about a woman in the 1990s who is a housewife, and she decides to join the local book club things kind of go awry and she ends up becoming part of a splinter book club with a closer knit circle of friends, and they all read true crime novels. And then one day a man named James Harris appears in the town and starts to befriend our main character and her group of friends. But then some children on the other side of town start to go missing and turn up dead, and she thinks that James Harris has something to do with it. This one just like I feel like I have to say what Lianne said to me. So my friend Lianne from the Through Diversions, I was moaning to her about this book and about how I was saying if I ever talk about picking up a Grady Hendrix again, she needs to bully me out of it. And she said that her conclusion was that Grady Hendrix is the biggest catfish author ever, where he will give you this amazing premise and just not deliver on the premise. And I have to agree. Like, I enjoyed Horror Store, but this one is the companion novel to My Best Friend's Exorcism. I didn't enjoy My Best Friend's Exorcism, but I thought this might be better. It was not. Where was the horror? Where was the vampire content? Where was any explanation around how this vampire worked? Where was anything? This book is incredibly slow. It's quite chunky, and like the text is pretty small, so it is a slog to get through, and honestly it just doesn't do enough to warrant its size. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. I feel like it was misrepresented. I feel like if it was represented more as kind of a literary horror, I would know what I was getting into and I would be less mad about it. But this one promised me vampires and did not deliver vampires. And I feel like it never explained either. There was a very heavy race element to the vampires, and that was never explained. Just was a thing. And nothing was explained. I'm frustrated with it. Then I read Takeaway by Angela Hui. This is an autobiography. This is Angela talking about her life growing up as a young Chinese girl in rural Wales to immigrant parents running a Chinese takeaway. It talks about how she both rebelled against and connected to her culture, about how isolated they felt as the only Chinese people kind of in their town, and the racism they faced as well, but also kind of the joy of running a takeaway and the good moments of it as well. It's not a bleak look, but it's an honest look at her life growing up. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very readable. She also provides some great recipes in there that I'm looking forward to trying. And I thought it was very insightful, and she was very honest about what she was like as a child and as a teenager. She doesn't shy away from talking about the moodiness and the things that she did that she probably shouldn't have done, and the ways that she disrespected her parents that she wouldn't do now. And I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it. And I think especially if you are living in the UK, I think it's a good eye-opening sort of depiction of the kind of casual racism that people of an Asian descent face in the UK, because I think that's often more common than the kind of outright racism people expect. Then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is an adult contemporary literary fiction, again translated from Japanese. This one I was a bit disappointed by, if I'm being honest. I would say this is probably a 3.5 star rating for me. This one is about a cafe in Tokyo where if you sit in a particular seat in the cafe, you can travel back in time for the length of time that your coffee stays warm. And so if you don't come back before the coffee gets cold, you become a ghost. And I liked the premise, but I feel like it was a little bit rushed and a little bit obvious where everything was going. I feel like I was supposed to be surprised and I wasn't. I did really like the different storylines and how it kind of displayed different kinds of love and the complexities of human nature and family relationships. I really enjoyed those aspects to it, but I just kind of wanted a little bit more than I got. I would say that I'm intrigued to read more, and if we get to hear the story of the woman in the chair, I would very much like to read the next book if that's in it. But overall, I'm kind of like, I knew where this book was going, and I don't mind that so much if I enjoyed the journey, but I didn't particularly enjoy the journey getting there either. But I did read this book very quickly, so that might have impacted my enjoyment of it. Next up, we have Mina and the Undead by Amy McCall. This is a young adult mystery/thriller. This one follows Mina, who is 17 years old. She has come to New Orleans to visit her sister, who recently moved there. and she's spending the summer working in this horror movie kind of attraction place with her sister. But on her first day, she discovers a dead body in the attic, and this dead body is clutching hair that looks like her sister's. And so she goes on a mission to find out what's really going on, especially because this dead body has puncture wounds on its neck that look like teeth marks. This is a really good book for if you liked A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and you want to try something kind of supernatural. Try this. I really enjoyed it. I flew through it. It's incredibly readable. It's very fast paced. It has an interesting romance in it that develops in a way I wasn't expecting, and lots of plot twists. I predicted a couple of plot twists, but most of them I did not, and I really like that. I don't get that often in books. And I just thought it was a really good, fun vampire read that delivered on the vampire content that the other vampire books I read this month did not. There's a good amount of blood and gore without it going beyond the realms of YA. And the final book that I read in October was The Golden Mole by Catherine Rundell. This is a non-fiction, and each chapter is about a different endangered species, talking about some fun facts about the species, myths and legends that have kind of originated around them, and then also why humans are leading to them being endangered or extinct. It's an interesting read. I read it very quickly. It's a very quick read. It's got beautiful illustrations. This edition also has gilded edges, which I love. But overall, I would say I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, because I was kind of pitched it as more hopeful and lighthearted than it was. It is a bit depressing to read, and I kind of wish there was a little bit more hope in this book, but there isn't. But I did think the writing style is really beautiful and very readable, and I really, really enjoyed learning about these different animals, some of which I'd never heard of, and just the fun facts and the myths and legends that have come about around them are also really interesting. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to see more content from me. All of my social media links are in the description below. If you'd like to leave me a comment just to let me know that you were here, leave me a vampire emoji in the comments below. Thank you again. Bye.